Meeting for February 6, 2018. I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Trustee Kammerer?
Here.
Carbonaro? Absent. Daney?
Here.
Cabrera? Absent. Hopkins?
Here.
Ranky?
Here.
President Wallace.
Here. We've requested Father Christopher Chomek from St. Peter Damian Catholic Church do our invocation this evening. Father Chomek.
All-powerful God, as you gather us together this evening, we praise you. We thank you for all your graces, and we ask for your mercy, and we ask for your blessing upon this meeting, upon everyone gathered here, especially those who govern us. We pray, God, that you will bless those who govern us with your gift of wisdom and prudence and right judgment, gift of understanding and knowledge. And may the way we think and speak and live our lives be pleasing to you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen.
Thank you, Father Chomek. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moves to the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda listed with an asterisk will be considered and enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion on the items that are listed under the consent agenda. At this point, is there any board member that would like to add or remove anything from the consent?
Mr. President.
Mr. President, I'd like to add item number C1 under golf, finance and golf, the ordinance abating certain 2017 tax levies of the Village of Bartlett for Special Service Area Number 1, Bluff City.
Any issues with that? Anything else?
Mr. President, I'd like to add D1 as well, an ordinance amending section 311 and 33212 of the Bartlett Municipal Code regarding the Class J liquor license.
Any issues with that? Okay. Anything else?
Finally, Mr. President, I would like to remove the bills list from the consent agenda, and I'd like to add item F1 under Public Works.
Right.
Can I add A2?
Which one? A2.
That could be added too.
Does anybody have any issues with A2? We talked about that. The appointments will come on the next board meeting. Okay? All right, let me see if I get this straight. The consent agenda will now include the minutes. We'll be removing the bills list. The consent agenda will also include, under Planning and Zoning Committee, item A2, the ordinance amending Title I, Chapter 6, 1-4 or 1-6-4-2 and 1-6-4-3 of the Bartlett Municipal Code regarding order of business and committees of the board. The consent agenda this evening will also include, under Finance and Golf Committee, ordinance abating certain 2017 tax levies of the Village of Bartlett for Special Service Area Number 1, Bluff City. Also under Finance and Golf Committee, the consent this evening will include the resolution approving of disbursement request for payout number 4 from the subordinate lien tax increment revenue note, Series 2016 for the Elmhurst Chicago Stone Bartlett Quarry redevelopment project. We'll be adding to the consent agenda under License and Ordinance Committee, item 1, the ordinance amending sections 3-1-1 and 3-3-2-12 of the Bartlett Municipal Code regarding the Class J liquor license. The consent will also include St. Peter Damian Church Class D liquor license. The consent will also include the resolution approving the removal of dangerous trees in the Heritage Oak Tree Preservation Easement at 341 South Hickory Avenue. The consent agenda will be adding this evening under Public Works Committee Resolution authorizing the use of motor fuel tax funds in the amount of $1,690,000 for the fiscal year 2018-2019 MFT program. The consent will also include this evening resolution approving the First Amendment to non-exclusive license agreement between the Village of Bartlett and the Chicago SMSA Limited Partnership doing business as Verizon Wireless.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Trustee Hopkins, seconded by Trustee Daney. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Daney,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Ranky,
Yes.
Camera.
Yes.
That motion carries. Next item on our agenda this evening is the bills list. I'll entertain a motion to...
Just to amend the consent agenda. That motion was to amend the consent
Oh,
agenda.
yeah,
We need-
sorry. I need a motion to approve the amended consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Camer, seconded by Trustee Hopkins. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Hopkins,
Yes.
Ranky,
Yes.
Camera,
Yes.
Daney.
Yes.
That motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve the bills list from February 6, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Hopkins, seconded by Trustee Camer. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Ranky,
Abstain.
Camera,
Yes.
Daney,
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
You need to call me.
President Wallace.
Yes,
Yes.
that motion is granted. Next item this evening is Treasurer's Report, which we have none. President's Report, there is none. Does anybody have any questions for staff?
I'm getting some inquiries again about the Marathon Station. They kind of died down a little bit, but they see that there's some activity up there, and just curious what's happening.
We did get a letter from BP about the Lust Fund incident and where they're at in the Lust Fund and an update on that. We've hired our environmental consultant to kind of bird dog that to make sure, to see where they're going with it. The owner still would like to operate it as a gas station, but BP is supposed to do the cleanup or remediation and then do a corrective action plan. That's what the letter indicated that we got from them. And I'm having our Deegan and Associates just follow up on that to see if it's going to be a reality or if it's something we're going to be chasing. Because a lot of times with those Lust Fund positions, they give you a certain amount of time and then you can extend it. And the EPA is pretty easy to give you an extension. I think it's like a 4-year extension. So hopefully, I mean, if you listen to the owner of the property, he's getting they're going to get it cleaned up and he's going to go in there and remodel the gas station and open it up again. But that's kind of where we're at. We did get the letter from the BP's consultant and where their lust number, incident number, whatever they call it. So.
Good. Anything else? Moves on to our town hall portion of the meeting this evening. If anyone would like to address the board at this time, please step up to the podium. Try to keep your comments to 3 minutes and kindly state your name and address for the record.
My name is Terry Witt. I live at 471 Southwestern Avenue in Bartlett. And I'm here, I'd just like to make a few comments on the speed study that you're performing downtown. To me, it's all about walkability. Walkability. Now, nobody's getting hit by cars downtown, but I would suggest that there's nobody walking downtown. They don't want to be hit by cars. So we don't have a lot of people downtown. And downtown could be and should be an economic engine for us. And the best way to do that is to improve the walkability. Get some customers down there. Give businesses a reason to come. You know, if it's walkable, I think we're going to get some more business. I mean, the restaurants are pulling people in there. Alone, that, you know, it takes more than that. Now, I would like to suggest that we expand the study, though, area of the speed limit. Both South Bartlett and West Bartlett roads are long straightaways leading into downtown. And those straightaways, they encourage stepping on the gas. Now, on South Bartlett, for example, all summer long, you can see kids standing down there by the stables, the crosswalk, on the high wire line, wanting to go to the pool, wanting to go to the library, and they're just waiting for those cars going 35 miles an hour to get out of the way so they can get across. Now, lowering the speed alone isn't going to make everything more walkable, but there are some very low-cost things we can do to help encourage walkability. And one of those is line of sight. Now, if you pull out of the V&V parking lot or the MB parking lot, you have to drive across the crosswalk, the sidewalk there, in order to see if anybody's on the sidewalk. You know, by that time, it's a little bit late. And once you get across the sidewalk, you don't really care about anybody on the sidewalk. You're looking for those cars that are going 30 miles an hour. How do I get across? And over on West Bartlett Road, if you're on Western Avenue trying to get across Railroad, you have to pull through the crosswalk in order to see those 35-mile-an-hour cars coming. That's the entrance to downtown. And Devon isn't any better. There you got cars coming down this hill at 40 miles an hour, and you're trying to get across. And once spring comes and all the leaves come out, you can't see through all those trees to see those cars coming down the hill. So there's a lot of things we can do. And if we can get our place more walkable, I think we can get more businesses coming to downtown and more people enjoying what we should in a community like Bartlett. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Terry.
What is the status of the speed study?
So we're still aiming to complete the study. The issue we're having is getting the traffic counters down with the weather. And there's a threat, every time there's a threat of snow, we can't put them down because the plows will just tear them up. So we're waiting for a stretch of weather where we're not expecting any snow and get those down and get the study done then.
Okay, thank you.
Would anybody else like to address the board at this time?
Hi, John Leonardo with Frederick Quinlan. Thank you for having me again. Just here for a couple of seconds to talk about progress on the new police facility. It's a little bit more disguised now that the majority of the progress is happening on the inside of the building. Inside the building, the first floor is metal studs are up, the drywall is up, the walls are going up, all the plumbing and electrical roughing on those floors are done, and we're about a week or so behind that on the second floor, putting all of that together. So on the inside of the building, all the things you would see in normal construction from metal studs and electric roughing and plumbing, again, on the second floor is moving right along. So those things are happening at a good pace. We still are on schedule to be done and turn the building over for move-in in May, and with the completion of the second phase by the end of the year. So things are moving along. We've been very fortunate to keep progress going. Be happy to answer any of your questions or if anyone has any. Thanks, good night.
Thanks for being here.
People that want to speak before the committee, they should do it now. Instead of the committee, they have something to say. They don't allow them to speak.
Okay, good. For those of you that are here to speak about the Jacaranda development, we will be going in to vote on that under committee. So if you want to say, if you want to.
The vote won't be under committee.
The vote won't be under committee, but we're going to be, it's a little bit different as far as our schedule tonight. So if you have any comments to make, this would be a good time to do it in town hall.
That also might be the case for the Alperin subdivision.
Yeah, and the other subdivision too.
So
If you do have any comments to make, there isn't a time during committee that you have to make those comments from the podium.
Now would be the time to make a comment, if you were going to make a comment about any other.
Nobody?
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Moving on to the standing committee reports this evening. Our first standing committee report is Planning and Zoning Committee Chairman Hopkins.
Thank you, President Wallace. There's 2 items on our committee agenda. One got covered under the consent. The other is the Jacaranda subdivision. And I'll basically make the motion. I move to reconsider of an ordinance approving of the preliminary and final PUD plan, the final plat of subdivision, the rezoning from an SR2 PUD zoning district to the P1 zoning district, lots 16 and 22, granting a special use permit for the planned unit development and the extension of time to commence construction of the Jacaranda PUD and subdivision.
Did you make a motion?
That is his motion.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Hopkins, seconded by Trustee Daney. Is there any discussion? Is that his motion to reconsider?
That's the first motion, right? It requires a simple majority vote
Yep.
of those present.
Hearing no discussion, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Cammer,
Yes.
Daney,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Ranky.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, so now we're reconsidering the Jacaranda subdivision. So with that, I'd kind of like the traffic engineer to kind of go through a presentation of what their findings were. I know a couple trustees requested.
Can we make the motion and then have her do it during discussion?
Yeah, I could do that. I move the passage of ordinance 2018-13, an ordinance approving of the preliminary and final PUD plan, the final plat of subdivision, the rezoning from the SR2 PUD zoning district to the P1 zoning district, lots 16 and 22, granting a special use permit for a planned unit development and an extension of time to commence the construction of the Jacaranda PUD and subdivision.
Second.
It's moved by Trustee Hopkins, seconded by Trustee Cammer, and we can have some discussion. Would you share your information with us?
Good evening. My name is Lynn Means. I'm with Gewalt Hamilton. I'm a senior transportation engineer. Our address is 625 Forest Edge Drive in Vernon Hills, Illinois. Just to give you a brief overview of our traffic study and our findings, and I'd be happy to answer specific questions that you may have as a result of that. We performed peak hour traffic counts at the intersections surrounding the neighborhood, Gerber at Jacaranda, along Hawk Hollow and Winston, at Penny Lane and Benson, as well as observations at those intersections, as well as the school access driveways on Jacaranda Drive. We conducted them during the weekday morning, a 7 to 9 a.m. timeframe, as well as an afternoon extended timeframe. We started at 2 p.m. and went to 6 p.m. Normally, our counts go to 4 to 6, but just given the school's release period at 2:30 p.m., we extended those to start at 2 p.m. so we could cover both the school release as well as the evening street peak. So first, we did a base assessment just to see how it's operating currently. And based on our findings, we found that most intersections, actually all intersections, operated at acceptable levels of service. During the morning, we found that there to be no delays or backups onto Jacaranda Drive, and that's predominantly since most of the parents that do drop off and pick up, you come and you drop and then you leave. During the afternoon school peak, that's when you tend to see more of a backup because the parents, they come and then they wait, and then it's, all of the release, and then they all exit at a certain time frame. Typically, the morning and the evening is concentrated to about a 20 to 30 minute time frame. Looking at the afternoon time frame, as far as once school operations, if anything, extends back out to Jacaranda, we found that during the school peak, it wasn't until maybe a 5 to 10 minute window where school traffic started to build up past the driveways where it extended onto Jacaranda in itself. But within, again, a 5 to 10 minute time frame, the school releases. They're very, very timely with the bus service we noted, with them loading the kids and getting them out. We saw within 6 to 8 minutes of the school release, the kids were loaded and those buses left. So in general, we found that the streets, as currently are designed, accommodate the traffic, and we find that with the extended roadway network connecting Winston Lane to Jacaranda to the north and to the south, it provides, I think, greater flexibility for those residents that currently live both to the north and south to access the school without having to travel on to Gerber. We did find that there were a few parents, 5 to 10, that actually dropped off at the fence at the stubs, and they either parked or let their kids out, and most of them parked and walked their kids, got back in their cars and left. So this connection provides that flexibility for them to be able to access the school without having to do a more circuitous route. As far as traffic going in between those roads, using it as a shorter route to get to, say, Schick or to Army Trail. We found it to be like a minimal benefit as far as relief for the folks going north. It would be more of them that would be traveling to the west on Schick and vice versa from the subdivision to the north going south to Army Trail to the east. So in general, even considering a conservative amount of those people going through the subdivision, we would still find acceptable operations. Our recommendation is that with the development in place, there would be acceptable levels of service. We find that that gives it greater flexibility and access for both the residents as well as for emergency response to those areas as well. And we would recommend that just upon opening, they work with the completion of the subdivision and the roadways, that they work with the police staff just for the need to possibly sign some speed limit signs through there, possibly some no parking, maybe on one side or the other side, or in close proximity to the intersections, as well as the time frame that we counted, just to note, was a much higher time frame for drop-off and pickups. Being a winter time frame, you actually get increased car traffic because most parents want to drive and drop off versus let their kids walk. So we don't have a hot, we didn't get our pedestrian counts was very low during that time frame. So that's one thing that we'd like to monitor, is just the need for additional safety staff for crossings at particular locations. No, that was a lot. So if there's, like I said, specific questions related to something we studied or findings, I'm happy to address any questions.
Once the houses are built on Jacaranda, is that street wide enough for, let's say, the residents want to park on their street? Is that going to impede or stop traffic flow in any way from, the buses? And
well, they would be designed to your subdivision code. And they would be designed to maintain the two-way traffic. And then, as I noted, it would just be something whether or not you would want to post any no parking signs on one side or another. We don't believe that it would impair, your typical subdivisions where you would want to have anything wider, because essentially, it's, as I noted, the traffic's really concentrated to morning, they're coming in and they're leaving. They're not really causing a backup, and really your afternoon time frame is a very small window where it's not contained within the school property in itself. So that's not going to impact the adjacent roadway network, and I wouldn't recommend building wider streets for a 5-minute window. I would suggest that it could be regulated either via, looking at internally to the sites. There could be some improvements internally that you may be able to do to make some adjustments, or it could be done through some limited parking restrictions on the streets.
Now, did you have a chance to talk to the petitioner about how the bus traffic is actually going to flow? Is it going to flow back out of Jacaranda? Or is it going to flow through the subdivision?
Currently, it's recommended to maintain through Jacaranda as it does currently, since it works well. I wouldn't, unless there was a reason why it wasn't flowing correctly, but it does flow appropriately. They can release now within a 6 to 8 minute window, and that volume of traffic is going to get lower just because of some of the neighborhood nature, obviously, of the school and the residents coming on and off of Winston, where it wouldn't be impeded. So we would recommend that they maintain the Jacaranda to Gerber.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion?
I think if, it's disappointing that we're so constrained by the consent decree. We don't have an awful lot of discretion in this. If we're going to do this, I think it makes sense to ban parking, at least during the morning and afternoon rush hour on Jacaranda and Winston. And then I would reiterate too, if we're going to do this, let's vacate that Fair Oaks right-of-way. I don't think we need that.
It renders it almost impossible.
Right, right. And then what's the speed limit going to be? Are we going to maintain the same speed limit, or are we going to drop that down?
What's the current speed limit?
Jacaranda is 25, I think, or 20. What's the school zone?
I think the streets around there are all 25.
Okay.
However, we would enact the school speed limit zones for 20 miles an hour while school's in session and kids are present. So that's kind of what we've done around every other school too, so it stays consistent.
Okay, fantastic.
How do you guys determine that? Is it like a mile away from a school? What is it typically? Or is it kind of just based on the area?
We follow the manual on uniform traffic control devices, so whatever that recommendation is, that's what we follow.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Thank you. Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Daney?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Ranky?
Yes.
Camera?
Yes.
That motion carries.
That's all we have. Our other item, A2, was covered under the consent agenda, so that's all we have under planning and zoning tonight.
Thank you, Chairman Hopkins. Next standing committee report this evening is under the Building Committee. Chairman Cabrera is absent. She has nothing under her committee. Next standing committee report is the Finance and Golf Committee. Chairman Daney.
Mr. President, 2 items we had on the agenda were covered under consent. We have nothing else this evening.
Thank you, Chairman Daney. Next item for standing committee reports this evening is License and Ordinance Committee. Chairman Camera.
The 3 items we had under License and Ordinance Committee have been covered under the consent agenda as well.
Thank you, Chairman Camera. Next item is the Police and Health Committee, who is Chairman Carbonaro, who is absent this evening. There's nothing under his committee. And finally, under Public Works Committee, Chairman Ranky.
Thank you, Mr. President. Both of the items were taken care of on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Chairman Ranky. Brings us down to new business. Does anyone have any new business they would like to share or bring up?
As a matter of fact, I do. I have a question for staff because I received an email from a resident concerning the trains on West Bartlett Road and whether or not there's anything that they could be doing as residents on the west side of that train tracks.
In here.
It's definitely an issue with the train stopping apparently more frequently on the tracks for longer periods of time. And she made comment that her daughter was on the school bus for 40 minutes while the train stopped. Now, I know there's a point in time where they can be fined. I don't know how long they can stop or how that works. I kind of have this idea that they can stop for 15 minutes, move the train, have another 15 minutes, move the train, and it's pretty dicey as to what they can really be fined or anything else. Is that correct?
That is correct. Let me tell you, we talked to Jim Kaderis, who's been working with us from CN for a long time on this intersection. And this morning, there was a particular problem with a freight train. They coordinate their efforts with CP at the Spalding Yard. And that is where we get into trouble because the length of these trains take them past our crossing. And this morning, the CP cars were not where they should have been. So they had to work with CP to get those cars moved out of the way so that the CN train could go in. Now, that was just today. But really, what the cause of those lengthy delays are usually the movements between big freight trains, between those two companies, coordinating at the yard. You know, lots of times they're taking cars from CP when it comes in, they're taking certain cars, hooking them onto CN car trains, and then moving them out. They have requirements in terms of their business responsibilities for those cars and how fast they move and when they move. So they do have their own motivations to move those trains quickly. Sometimes it doesn't work. They have the right-of-way. They tell us, you know, our tracks were here first before your roads. So that's the harsh line. We have found that CN has been really trying to work with us on minimizing those long delays. They've added electrical switches where there were manual switches. If you remember years ago, they actually had to kick a guy off the train, have him run up and manually flip a switch. It was the only manual switch left on the line, and they've, you know, worked with us to make that an electrical switch so that, you know, it happens much quicker. They're doing what they can for us. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot that they can do to minimize those delays when they happen. But they are committed to work with us as much as they can, but they're limited as well.
How much notice do we get when these super long trains come through? I mean, they're on a schedule, obviously. Is there a situation where we could do some kind of,
route?
We have a lot of technology now. Is there something we could do, like before people get to Munger, saying a long train is approaching, take Munger South to Army Trail, it's going north, and you can bypass it that way, other than having that huge lineup?
You know, I would have to check with CN on that. You know, there was a reporting decree that they were under with the STP for a few years ago where we got reporting data like that, but we got it on the back end, not on the front end. So let me talk to Jim and see if
I've sat there for 15 minutes before, and I wish, and everybody's thinking, you know, should I do a U-turn? Well, if I do a U-turn, it'll probably be done.
Right.
But if we knew that, we've got that information. If you have it and you know that the train's just starting, take Munger, go south and go to Army Trail. You're not sitting there for 15, 20 minutes.
see if they can give us some kind of heads up.
I think that would be really a service to the residents that travel that road a lot.
Well, and even if we don't get the data from the railroad in advance, at least a light further east or west from the railroad tracks, so new in advance, so you can divert at Munger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Long train coming, consider taking Munger South to Army Trail.
Yeah, let me see.
Something like that. I mean, that kind of technology, because we've been talking about this for 8 years, 10 years.
It's not really getting better.
It's not getting any better.
Oh, no,
Which
the
brings-
trains are getting longer.
Which brings up the whole discussion that nobody wants to have as to whether or not we should ever start really approaching the state, a broke state, basically, that about what it would take to have an overpass or underpass put on that road. I mean,
Is there any federal grants that would do that?
just something, I mean, is there any way to get,
I can tell you, there've been towns that have been lobbying for a long time, but go ahead, Jim.
We estimated that overpass a number of years ago when Cook County was contemplating, when they built some of the West Bartlett Road that four-laned all the way to Munger and went east. And I'm talking 15, 20 years ago, and the cost was $10 million to do an overpass. And the biggest problem that you have there that we found is that some of that is in the city of Elgin's jurisdiction, because Elgin comes across, and then there's a chunk of land that is unincorporated that ComEd owns. There's a gas pipeline easement. So there was a lot more complications to it. And add on to that there's some floodplain and wetland area right at the the crossing right by the mobile home park as it comes, the creek goes underneath there. So it's a big ticket item. I'm sure that cost has increased, and you would have to coordinate it with the different jurisdictions that actually own the property and the city of Elgin.
We also, when they were taking over their lines and rerouting, CN was taking over. They had to get a permit, if you will, from the Surface Transportation Board, and we took part in the hearings, and then actually in a lawsuit in Washington, we were one of the last municipalities to settle with them. But in the old days, we'd issue fines, they'd ignore them, and the courts have said, we can't fine them. It's a regional, or if not national, issue with moving trains, and they can fine them. And so their fining and sanctions are all through the STP. We asked if we could meet the criteria to get an overpass as part of the condition, and we did not have meet the criteria compared to other jurisdictions on the line where the STP mandated as part of granting them permission that they build a couple of overpasses. So we made that pitch and we didn't meet the criteria. So, you know, our hands in terms of us enforcing fines are tied. The courts do not grant us that authority. We used to issue them all the time.
I kind of hate to think of it, just that we can't even try, you know, it's just what it comes down to. That was,
I think the idea of the reporting and giving notice ahead of time so that people can avert it. We figure out the technology for that. That may be a service that would be good, that they may be willing to cooperate on.
Any other new business? Hearing none, I'll enter.
Well, I do have some good news if you'd like.
Oh, good, yeah, go ahead, let's share it,
Dan,
lay it on us.
You want to, yeah, oh, all right. We got the official word today that we got our Lake Michigan water allotment from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. So the Public Works team and Brian and CD and building, you know, did all the math and figured out what our water use will be, and we made the pitch, and they said, oh, good, you can here's your water, you can have it. So major step in getting water to come in May of 19, and we're still on schedule for that. Dan gave me a very long, complicated chart of all the things we have yet to do and the dates for that, and we're going to put together a map of that graphically so that residents can click on each of the pieces that we have to put in to get the water here, and it'll have the cost and our progress on it so they can watch it come as we build it. So,
Excellent.
Major milestone today.
Good news. Great job, good work, thanks. Anything else? I think that we should get a prize for being here, the other two slackers. If that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, we'll be moving directly into the committee of the whole meeting.
So moved.
Moved by trustee Kammer, seconded by trustee Hopkins. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Hopkins? Hopkins?
Yes.
Ranky?
Yes.
Kammer?
Yes.
Daney?
Yes.
We are adjourned.